Today we're going to be talking about Flexbox. What is it, why is it important, and how to use it. So first of all, it's a CSS display property. How can it be used and why is it important? Well, it's used to manage your HTML layout, right? So basically, all your different items and divs and whatever in HTML, it's going to help you manage those. It's going to help you arrange them so you don't have to deal with the pixel by pixel placement. So I have a pretty basic project right here. We have a red container. This is going to hold stuff. And then I got two green boxes inside of the container. So if I go ahead and I add more boxes, they're of course just going to continue to stack on top of each other just like that. Now, wouldn't it be great if there was an easy way to make them go next to each other, right? And just keep on going next to each other instead. So completely change how they arrange themselves in this capacity. Well, there is, and it's called Flexbox. So that's what we're talking about right now today. First thing you need to do is go inside of your container, right? So this is this red box, the red box right here, the giant red box, not the green boxes. The container, and you're going to give the container a display property of flex. Now, as soon as I save this change, you're going to notice that something happens. So all of the default properties associated with flex are going to be applied, and you're going to notice that those two boxes stacked on top of each other, pushing save now, are no longer stacked on top of each other, right? They're right next to each other. So there's a lot of different properties in Flex, and I'm going to go through and explain the main ones that I use on a daily basis, right? So one of those first ones is justify content, okay? So the default behavior of Flex is justify content start. That's what we're seeing right now. That's why when I pushed save, nothing happened. So what does that mean? What is start, right? It's just going to go on the main axis. So main is kind of weird, right? That one always confuses me. But basically, if you're going horizontal right now, if you're stacking things left to right and whatnot, your main axis is going to be the way that they're stacking, right? So whether it's a row or a column, and more on that later. But right now, the items are going next to each other. So you got a row setup, right? You got a flex row setup. So the horizontal axis is your main axis. So they're going left to right, that's your main axis. Justify content is going to affect that main axis. So we go to the start, which is the left over here of that main axis. If we were to reverse the Flexbox, then the start's going to be on the other side. But it's a normal axis. All we have is a Flexbox. We're going left to right. We got a row over here, left to right. So justify content is going to go to the start of that row. Now, what if I don't want to do start? What if I want to put those boxes right in the middle of my container? Is that possible? Is it easy to do? Do I need margin? It's easy, it's possible, and you don't. So we're going to type center instead of start. Now what this is going to do is it's going to position your items across, again, that horizontal main axis, in the center of the axis. So it's going to take those two boxes and it's going to put them right here in the middle. So they're no longer all the way at the start. And you guessed it, if I don't want the start and I don't want the center, but I want the end, I can type end or flex end, save that, and it's going to put them at the end of the box. Now, there's a lot of nuance with this. Different browsers can sometimes render it differently, and there's different WebKit properties you can add and whatnot. I'm not going to get into the advanced stuff with that. This is just going to be a basic intro. So we're going to put these back at the start. So again, this takes all of the items in the container and does this to them, arranges them in that capacity. Now, what if I wanted to arrange them vertically, right, along that other axis? So we're going left to right, so our main axis is horizontal. The secondary axis is going to be the opposite of that, so the vertical. So this is our secondary axis, top to bottom. Now, justify content affected that main axis of left to right. What's going to affect the secondary axis is align items. So we do align items. We're going to add this property to our flex container. Again, not the items inside. And as soon as we add this property, I'm going to go ahead and do start as well, same as the other one. Now, again, default property. As soon as I push save, what do we expect to happen? Absolutely nothing, because it's already at the top of our container. That is the start of our vertical axis, right? The container's starting up here. This is at the start. If we want to do, we'll mix it up this time, go straight to the end with align items. You guessed it, right at the bottom. And what if I want to put them in the middle of our secondary vertical axis? So I want them to go somewhere over here, right? We're going to do center. Save that, align item center, and it's now in the middle. But why is it in the middle on the left, right? We got to think about the combination of our flex properties to answer that question. So we have our flex container, we have a justify content of start. So remember, what does that do? That puts it all the way back at the beginning of our horizontal axis, right? Our main axis. So we're going left to right. The start is the left. We have an align items of center. That affects our vertical axis, so top to bottom. So along our secondary vertical axis, where are we? We said we want to be in center, so that's going to be right here. But because we have a justify content of start, we're going left to right at the start, which is over here. So justify content start, align items center, and there we go. That's why it's positioned there. Any idea how we can get it in the middle right over here? $1 million question, right? Justify content center, right? So if we change this to center, they both have a center now. So justify content center, align item center. As soon as I press save, these boxes are going to teleport right into the middle. Now, these are probably some of the most important row Flexbox properties that I use on a daily basis. They help you arrange all kinds of stuff. I'm going to run through one more here that's super critical, and then we'll get on to what happens when you start changing more fundamental properties of the Flexbox. Like let's say we do a flex column instead of the default flex row. So the last thing I'm going to introduce right here is called a gap. So just gap, just like that. And we're going to give it a, let's say like a 1 pixel gap. Save that. And as you can see, all of our items are now being spaced out from each other with a gap of 1 pixel. We can make that much more obvious by going with 10 pixels, or maybe we want to do 20 pixels, etc., right? So again, there's a lot more other options for these properties like justify content, align items, and whatnot. But there's also more basic flex properties that we can change as well, like this secret property that I didn't tell you guys about. That is already set, called flex direction, and that is currently set to row. So when I press save, it does absolutely nothing because they're already in a row fashion, right? But if I were to change row to column, any guesses what that might do? Well, if I change it to column, it's going to take those two boxes, I'll press save right now, stack them right on top of each other, right? So now we have the two boxes and they're on top of each other because we still have a flex layout, but it's now columns instead of rows. Now our axes switched, right? Because our Flexbox is in the column format. So our quote unquote main column, the main direction of our box, is now top to bottom instead of left to right. So what does that mean? That means our justify content is now controlling the top to bottom vertical orientation. So if I were to now change justify content to start, it's no longer going to make the boxes go to the left, the start of the Flexbox, because it's not the start of the main axis of the Flexbox anymore. It's a top to bottom Flexbox, and the main axis is vertical, so it's going to go to the top of that axis. So as soon as I press save, you'll notice that the boxes go to the top. Super important, kind of nuanced, very strange to conceptualize at first, but basically your axes are switching. So justify content is basically going to do whatever align items was doing before and vice versa, right? So if I now do align items as start, that is going to be going left to right. Whereas before, of course, it went top to bottom. So start, and they end up over here. So these are some of the absolute most important Flexbox properties. They're the basics. I use these every single day developing web applications, so super duper important. This was a quick run through and crash course. I'll do more in-depth content. But thank you guys so much for joining me today and learning a little bit about Flexbox.